Hi everyone, I'm Caitlin James from Scalp Micropigmentation Australia, and welcome to another 5-minute fast facts on scalp micropigmentation, the Pro Artist series, where we're interviewing some amazing scalp micropigmentation artists from around the world, getting their tips and tricks on how you can get the best out of your scalp micropigmentation transformation. Today's artist is located in Arizona. She is very well known within the SMP community as one of the first artists to create an online forum for artists to discuss all things scalp micropigmentation as the industry emerged way back in 2016. She has talked at many SMP conferences and clearly passionate about artist education as well as using coloured pigments with scalp micropigmentation. With training and education at the forefront of who Taryn is, she continuously gives back to the SMP community with advice and is very experienced at SMP as well as permanent makeup, excelling in colour theory. Taryn has a very informative webinar on this topic and promotes higher education behind how colour can sit in the skin. She is the owner of Cosmetic Aesthetics brand and has been well recognised for her successful use of colour in the scalp. Today we're talking to the colour expert, Taryn Quinterri. Welcome, Taryn.
Hey everybody, thanks for having me, Caitlin.
No worries. Thank you so much for taking time to join us and have a chat today about colour in the scalp. So thank you so much.
Sure.
Let's start by giving our listeners and viewers some background information on yourself. How did you come to enter the permanent makeup industry, and why did you decide to implement scalp micropigmentation into your business?
So that's a hilarious story, which I'll try to shorten a bit. I originally was in college for architecture. I was very, very good, but I was miserable. It was a very lonely career, and I realized that I'm a people person. I got a horrible tattoo. I'll spare you guys the details, but I ended up getting it lasered off. And by like the third session, I could tell that the laser was working, and I could tell it wasn't compromising my skin. And it was like a light bulb went off with money symbols. And I was like, that is genius to be able to remove people's mistakes. So I put myself through skincare, which was a prerequisite for laser. And during that time, I was introduced to the medical side of tattoos, so areolas and scars. And to my surprise, this was back in 2012, there was even scalps in this book. It wasn't as popular, and it was done all with iron oxide at the time. But nonetheless, I was fascinated with it. The first person that I trained with was Moshe Elul from Israel, and I just kind of felt like I needed to know more. So I sought out more information and trained with other people, Tony Belfalto, and some others I won't name and stuff like that. So, and that's basically it. I just fell in love, and that was it for me.
Yeah, brilliant. So traditional scalp micropigmentation has been taught using a grayscale set of pigments. How did you come to start by using and implementing colour?
So it started first with Moshe. He did use color. They were pre-mixed, and that was actually the part that I didn't really like. The second person I trained with was Carbon, and after about 8 to 10 months, I started noticing that how I had been trained by him was all turning blue, like literally. And thank God at the time that wasn't on my name. I was working for another company, so I didn't have to deal with any of that mess. And then when I trained with Tony, it was back to iron oxides with colors. And then as I was doing a lot of brows and I started introducing my brow work to carbon colors, that's kind of when I learned a ton about color theory, and it all started clicking in my head. And so then I just took that and applied it to scalp, and it's been working for me ever since.
Brilliant. So when is it best to use colour on the scalp with clients? Is there a certain percentage of people that colour works really well, or is it for everybody?
So I actually, over the years and through trial and error and things like that, I have come to like carbon way, way, way more. Carbon black. But that being said, I personally use a modifier, so orange or red, to prevent turning green or blue almost all the time. But that being said, when I train my students, I have my students start out, I recommend them starting out on darker skin types because you don't need to modify as much. And the reason for that is that it can be a little tricky. just learning the colors and things like that, it takes time. So that's something that I don't try to make them learn it all at once. I have them, send me pictures, and then it's a continuing learning process. So I always recommend as beginners, start with some darker skin types and we'll go from there. But I use colors all the time as modifiers. And even when I'm working on brown, like if I'm trying to achieve a brown hair color or follicle, I actually will use more orange mixed with the carbon black, because if you like paint, you mix orange and black and it makes brown, but the carbon lasts longer, carbon black, than using a brown carbon.
Yeah, brilliant. That's really clever. What are the long-term considerations to a client who has color used on the scalp?
To me, it's no different. A lot of times when I'm working on lighter browns and blondes, I will use just carbon colors and I won't use carbon black. And they do need touch-ups more often. So I guess that is one major consideration. But whenever I'm working with carbon black, which again is majority of the time, even if there is a color in there for modification, it's no different. And in my opinion, they actually will maintain that color longer. Whereas when I just used to use only carbon black, they would, kind of cool out after a while, and then I would have to adjust it.
Yeah, brilliant. And when do you like to see clients for maintenance sessions if they've had color used on the scalp? Is there a general time frame of, is it yearly? Is it every second year that you'd like to do a maintenance session?
So with iron oxides, which I rarely use, I'll use those on somebody who's really nervous. It's their first time. They're not ready to commit. Or, somebody who has alopecia areata where it kind of hops around. They will end up coming in about every 10 months. Mind you, I am in Arizona, so the sun is stronger. And then carbon, it's surprising to me every time. I've got clients that haven't hit me up for a session in 4 years. And then I've got clients that hit me up about every 2 years for maintenance. And then every now and then, if I'm using a lot of orange, like I said, to make a brown, they will need touch-up sometimes about once a year.
Yeah. Brilliant. Will these pigments disappear from the skin entirely if they were left alone and not touched up at redarkening appointments?
So I've noticed when I do use a lot of orange, when I'm making a medium brown, even with carbon black, they actually will disappear. And I wish I could explain it better, other than the orange molecule is larger than carbon black, and so it kind of traps it in, like it's in jail, orange and black. And that just tends to fade out as the skin sheds. I also work very superficial. I know there's other artists who go a little bit deeper than me, and their work looks a little bit darker, and so yeah, so the lighter colors, they do tend to disappear. They sort of blend in with the skin. But when you're using a lot of carbon black, so any of the dark browns to your black hairs, no, they will never completely fade away. The carbon black takes over.
Yeah. Brilliant. And what considerations does a client who's got a shaven look, who may have had, the procedure done to create a really youthful hairline, what considerations does that client need to take if he wishes to then lighten the hairline ready for redesigning? How can the color be removed?
So there's obviously, as you know, 2 ways to remove it. There's the saline topical removal, and then there's the laser. And I know some of the saline topical removal methods have gotten even better. I know there's undo and extract, which I've seen incredible results with. So that might be the choice that I would give my clients now that they exist. Prior to those existing, I actually would send clients to get laser because I felt that it was less aggressive on the skin. However, because I do use modifiers, they do need to consider, generally the carbon black will disappear very easily. It's actually the easiest color to remove. And so there will generally be a tiny little hue of pink left over. But depending on their skin color, a lot of the time it's not even noticeable, and it sort of blends in with their skin. And then usually, one more session, once you get to that pink residue, one more session and it's good to go.
Yeah.
So
lovely. Would you like to share with us one of your most memorable transformations that you've achieved using scalp micropigmentation?
Sure. Yeah. So this was actually in the beginning, so probably 6 years ago. And this guy was holding on to this little tiny bit of hair, you know, the little bunny tail on top, and he was doing the comb over, and I was like, you know, you gotta let that go, you gotta shave it. And he was like, just did not want to. So he actually didn't get it done for another 4 months after he had come in for his consult. And I would text him every, you know, month or so, checking up on him, hey, are you ready to do this yet? And he just wouldn't budge. And finally, I guess probably when he lost even more hair, he's like, okay, let's do it. So he shaves, we get the procedure done. 3 sessions later, and he texts me a selfie, and it's the cutest picture ever. And he said, thank you so much. My wife and I are having better sex than when we first met. And I just thought that was the cutest thing ever. So
that's cute. I like that.
Yeah. So I'll never forget that.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk about color and using color with scalp micropigmentation in the skin with us today, Taryn. I really appreciate your time.
You're welcome. Again, thank you so much for having me.
No worries. And thanks for being a part of the 5-minute fast facts on scalp micropigmentation, the Pro Artist series. I'm sure you've helped someone out there, maybe even another artist who's considering using color with scalp pigmentation to give the best effect for their client.
Absolutely. If anybody ever has any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'm always, you know, I'm always happy to share anything. So
yeah, Taryn's information will be below the video. So make sure if you're interested in learning more about color, you can take Taryn's webinar series of education online training. So make sure you hit the link below to have a look at that and check that out. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, we want to hear from you. So don't be shy. Make sure you give us an email or call. Pop something in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe so that you do stay up to date with the latest content as it's released. Thank you so much. And thanks for watching. We hope to see you soon. Thanks, Taryn.
Bye.